If you want quality, you'll find it in Lugano. Be hard to give a short version, but I'll try. So the talk that I did, it was mostly a lot of like practical observations from having to build both with Lightning and just building the company in general. Basically, I would say what we've learned in that time is to focus a bit more. We were trying to do a lot more at once. We've learned that there's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to deal with just with doing a startup in general. Like that, a lot of Bitcoin businesses neglect, like making sure you have a legal, opinion on certain things you're doing, making sure you do trademark stuff. But when it comes to technology, and just yesterday you may have seen me tweeting, like Lightning is very complex, and implementing it in a way where you're not basically designing the whole implementation, running the server and implementing it there, and the node on the phone in our example. It's a lot of work. It's a lot to manage. There's a lot of bugs to iron out, and we're using a newer implementation called LDK, and so that makes it even harder because it has had less time to bake in the oven, and so we're a little bit part of the experiment. It's overall a lot of work, and I hope that Bitcoiners appreciate the effort that we're making to make self-custodial possible on a phone, because I feel like that's the most important place, because it's the device that everybody likes having, everybody is willing to carry around and have, and not everybody in the world has a desktop computer or a laptop or a cloud node and these kinds of things. So maybe not the best summary. I still recommend people check out the presentation I did, because it was a lot of really unrelated learnings, but mostly just to observe and make sure you do correct and learn things as you're working.
Synonym is improving one of the most important parts of technology adoption, UX, UI. How are you achieving this good-looking product?
I think one big difference is that our CEO, me, is not an engineer. I try to be as technical as possible, and I can hold my own in many debates on technology, but I'm not a programmer of any kind. I have some familiarity with it, but it's never been a profession of mine. My profession was branding and design, and so we're much more design-oriented as a natural consequence of my own career experience. And we are also lucky enough, well, I guess it's not all luck, it's partially luck that we actually found a really great designer to lead our design, and we work very well together because I've worked with designers most of my career, well, at least before Bitcoin. And so we are very design-oriented, we're very branding-oriented, and thus we are also very user experience-oriented. And so also I'm a bit of iconoclast or going against the grain, and so I'm always looking to kind of start from scratch and ignore what people have done before and just try to really rethink things as necessary and be like, okay, this is just going to be confusing for normal people, and so let's just change it, and let's not use these terms anymore because they make no sense to people who aren't Bitcoin enthusiasts, and just constantly reevaluating everything. And design is just all about having empathy for the viewer, and so that's what we have. That's our difference. One of our differences.
What are the key elements that you consider while building the product?
I guess similar to where I started, like one is terminology. Products in Bitcoin for a long time were designed by engineers and thus for engineers. And so our ability as designers to, try to have empathy for our users and give them something we think will be useful to them is a bit potentially stronger. I don't know, maybe the other companies would feel theirs is strong as well. But, you have to have that empathy for the user. You also kind of have to know better than the user, because a lot of people think having empathy means asking the user what they want. And that's not always true. Like there are famous quotes, I forget, I'm not going to quote it properly, but if you ask people, they would say they wanted a faster horse instead of inventing a car. And there are more examples like this, but I kind of feel the same way. Like I see getting user feedback as an optimization, not as a form of research. And so we try to have a lot of confidence in our own ability to figure out what a new user experience should be and what a good user experience should be. And we try to figure it out for the user. When we're done putting our vision out there, then we will ask for feedback and optimize and try to see the things that maybe we missed.
In general, why is the UX not optimal in the products built so far in the market?
I don't think it's a lack of interest. Maybe a little bit of lack of awareness, but I think everybody's trying to do their best. Like, I don't think anybody's saying, design's a waste of time. You know, like, they all try to make what they think looks good, but you have a lot of different goals, a lot of different visions, and a lot of different types of experience, and a lot of different amounts of experience. I think we happen to be a little more experienced in design and branding and user experience. But there are other companies that have that too. It's just not as common because more of the projects are driven from engineering. They're even funded because of engineering. Like, the things in Bitcoin get funded because people see a technological potential that could be expressed and turn into an adoption potential. But it's not really people going out and trying to invest in Bitcoin companies that are trying to just have better design. It's not enough. And we do a lot more than focus on design as well. So maybe it's just not enough no matter what. But yeah, I think everybody's trying to do their best. I think there are other good, apps that are designed well. Of course, we think our way is the best because that's why we make it our way, because we think it should be this way. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe somebody else does better. Maybe ours isn't simple enough, or ours is too simple. Everybody should specialize and let things compete.
What are your thoughts on Bitcoin scalability? Should it be in layers?
I would like to see things be more conservative as far as just our approach to scaling. But I think they should also be practical in that a lot of the culture right now in protocol developers is focused on complexity and adding more complexity and wanting changes to Bitcoin to allow for complexity. And the problem with complexity is it's like exponential. You can't predict the interactions very easily and whether or not you've gone too far. And so something like Taproot interacting with BitVM, interacting with covenants, interacting with drive chains, you could create a real mess, and you could create an actual weakness in Bitcoin in that mess. And so scaling needs to be a bit more conservative and a bit more practical, and that might just be waiting till there's an actual problem to address and trying to do your best to address that problem in the most practical way. A lot of protocol development feels like what I would call styling. People are just trying to show off and show their cryptographic prowess, and that's just, Bitcoin isn't a place to express yourself.
Why did you choose to build on Lightning?
Well, we don't make any kind of proposals for protocols generally. We do some work with LSPs, Lightning Service Providers, and making specs for that. But that's just part of a community group that while we did initiate it, it's not necessarily led by anyone. It's just a community effort. And the reason why we still are trying to perfect the Lightning user experience is because it's the best proposal, the best project we have for scaling any aspect of Bitcoin. And the reason why it's the best is because it's actually made out of Bitcoin transactions. It is Bitcoin. And none of the other proposals or projects or side chains or layers can say that for the most part. You might be able to argue maybe RGB didn't require any change, but RGB has been a long time in the works. It's also fairly complex. And it remains to be seen whether it will be applied, in the wild successfully. So yeah, we have a policy at Synonym which we had to kind of learn to obey it ourselves, and we're getting much more strict about it. But it's basically that we just we won't take seriously any technology that doesn't exist yet. Like, for example, people ask me, "Oh, are you going to support Arc?" Well, Arc doesn't exist, and neither does its dependency. For the most part, it should need something like CTV. CTV doesn't exist. And so we just ignore these things until they're actually relevant. And we have that policy for Taro, Taproot assets, for everything that is not complete yet. The only way we'll take a risk is if we have a lot of control over that risk.
Do you have any interest in other scaling solutions besides Lightning?
No, our R&D is more related to peer-to-peer web stuff, like the stuff that we do with slash tags and not block, and how to do what a lot of people think you should use a blockchain for without a blockchain. As far as like proposals for Bitcoin protocol or other layers, no, we don't have anything like that, other than I do have some things I would like to do with standards for payment protocols, and we'll get more into that over the next year. I'm pretty sure we're going to go deeper into that and maybe even make it a proposal that we submit as a BIP or as a bolt or these kinds of things. But I have a lot of thoughts about how payment protocol should be improved, and that means that's an improvement that could be done for all aspects of Bitcoin, whether it be on-chain, off-chain, side chains, any of it. So that's something that we may get more involved with. We kind of stalled on that last year because of the whole mempool full RBF debate. I feel that zero confirmation acceptance and mitigation strategies used to be viable, and now they're a lot less viable because of that change, and that's why I fought so hard against that change. But that might be an area we could open up some innovation too. Like there's ideas for doing like a zero conf flag for miners to not replace it and things like this. So yeah, that would be the only area, and it would be not any sort of fork. It's mostly on the payment protocol level.
Why do you think that your good morning tweets trigger people about Bitcoin topics?
Depends what you mean by doing it on purpose. I'm being myself. It's not something I'm intentionally trying to trigger people or anything like that. Maybe I'm just a triggering guy, but I noticed that format of like doing a good morning tweet and then, detailing a Bitcoin misconception is mostly what they are, is talking about misconceptions. Or more so, it's like, I've been in Bitcoin for a long time, and I feel like I have mined these ideas in that time. And I want to share these ideas because they took a lot of thought and a lot of experience to be able to mine them. And I want other people to appreciate and apply them. And unfortunately, the most interesting things tend to be, things that people don't realize, and and a lot of things people don't want to realize is because they don't want to realize them. And so why does it trigger some people? I would say my earlier ones triggered people because they were much shorter. I would just make a statement and I would let people try to argue it, in the comments. My more later ones get into a little more detail and explain myself more, and you get a lot less triggered people that way. And so that's evolved. But I think any amount of getting triggered is tied to people's own, their own lack of confidence in their own understanding of Bitcoin, or their lack of confidence in Bitcoin being something that will be successful and make them rich. And thus, a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, derive their rationales from, if I support this, is there a chance it will help make me rich passively? And so they think, I want Bitcoin to pump. And so if you say, here's a new protocol, like here's ARC, here's Taproot assets, here's stable coins on Lightning, anything you say that they can imagine might turn into more people buying their bags at a higher price, they're going to immediately be inclined to support it. And when you're immediately inclined to do things, you become ignorant because you don't think about them. You just post-rationalize. You say, okay, I have an excuse to support this, good enough. And you don't go back and examine them. And I go back and examine a lot of things, and I like to share those things with people.
What was your first thought when you heard about Bitcoin?
Oh, I can get away with buying drugs online?
What do you like the most about Lugano so far?
It's a beautiful city. I mean, it's very walkable, despite it being very hilly, but it is still pretty walkable and nice to walk around. It's just very everything's high quality here. I just took a picture of the trash receptacles because I like the design on them. Like, that's Lugano.
What do you think about Lugano becoming a Bitcoin adoption hub?
I think it's a bit small to be a major hub, but I do really like the idea of creating hubs out of any city and trying to get adoption on a city level, working with like the local mayors and things like this. Like Madeira is another example that's kind of like that. And of course, El Salvador being the premier example. But yeah, I think what's happening here is great. I like to see that it's turning into education seminars in the summer, and we come here twice a year, our whole team, to do our team meetups. Bitfinex is having their team meetup here, while we're here this year too. And it's just a really nice place to visit, and it's really great that we have people like Tether and Bitfinex and Synonym and Hole Punch and all these kind of places that have this kind of home conference here. It's a really nice experience.
Did you have the opportunity to buy something with Bitcoin, USDT, or Luga in Lugano?
I've never used Tether, and I've never used any of the blockchains that Tether is on. So I haven't done that. But we have in our team, for our own wallet BitKit, we have a test. This is our third time in Lugano, where can we get it to pay at McDonald's? And I don't think they've done the test yet, but that'll be what we do probably on Monday, is we'll all go over there and see how we've done and if we can get BitKit to make a payment at McDonald's. But yeah, we also have our treasure hunt going on right now, and people are scanning QR codes to see if they can win a prize, and that seems to be working, so maybe the McDonald's test will work too.
What other cities can learn from the Lugano Plan B experience?
Honestly, nowhere. This is definitely the city with the most places I can actually pay in Bitcoin, including El Salvador. It's much more likely that when you ask if they accept Bitcoin, that you'll be able to pay in Bitcoin here. That's nowhere else has this degree. Granted, Lugano is smaller than some cities, but it's even aside from that, is still much more consistent. I live in Lisbon, and some people think of Lisbon as some kind of nomadic hub and some kind of Bitcoin hub. We have a monthly Bitcoin meetup. It's not bad, but as far as going to spend Bitcoin at places, it's much more rare. And El Salvador, I didn't go this year. I'm not going this year, but the last 2 years, it's not that easy to just find places that you can just pay in Bitcoin.
If you have to convince someone to go to Lugano, what will you tell them?
I mean, I guess it depends who they are and why. But I would say, like I said earlier, it's a very beautiful city. I mean, if you wanted to just go on a vacation here, I would see no reason why not to put it on your list. The view is like, it's surreal. Like when you're walking by the lake and you're looking at the mountain, you're like, is this real? Like this, it doesn't really look real. And it's a lot of high quality stores if you want to shop, if that's your thing. A lot of high quality spas and stuff. So I am not much of a tourist, and I don't do a lot of touristy things, so I'm not the best person to ask. But I have traveled a lot of places, and I can say with confidence that Lugano is like just top-notch quality. Like if you want quality of any of those areas, you'll find it in Lugano.